So after my last video on Pan-Africanism and some really cool, by cool I mean mean comments I got on the video, I felt I should clarify my position on people of African descent returning to the African continent. And I'd like to start with a story. In the year 2000, there was a man called Dan Foster. He was African American, and Dan Foster was a radio personality, and he was doing all right in the US, but probably felt he should explore opportunities elsewhere, because he wasn't quite getting, all the stuff he wanted from the American workspace. And he would get offers from different parts of the country, and eventually he would get offers from Nigeria. And there is a radio station in current day Lagos called Cool FM, and they would employ him, and he would move to Nigeria, where he lived till he died last year due to complications of COVID-19. Then Foster became a beloved Nigerian. We loved him. He became an icon. He did contribute significantly to, that workspace, and has inspired and helped raise a lot of really, really good radio personalities. And let's not talk about other contributions he made, maybe in TV, maybe in showbiz, and all that. And I wouldn't want to go into his personal life and the fact that he would eventually marry one of my sisters and would have lovely Nigerian kids. But if you watched typical Dan Foster work, it would be very difficult to tell that he wasn't Nigerian, because he embodied all of that, and he was proud of this country till the very last. So why do I tell the story of Dan Foster? Well, because it's inspiring, and number two, because that is somebody who did return, made an impact, and we are so happy about that. Do I think people should come back to Africa? Of course, I believe people should come back to Africa. Besides, Africa is a home of most black people, because we know that there are other black people in other parts of the world that are not genetically related to the African continent, but probably evolved where they were and have remained there. So if you've had the notion that I don't want black people coming back to Africa, then that's not correct. And in the rest of this video, I'm going to share with you the benefits of returning to Africa. We're going to also look at some disadvantages of coming back to Africa, because there are usually two sides to these things, so I'd be lying if I told you only the good aspects of coming back and shielding you from some of the other stuff that are not so pleasant that you experience, especially if you live in the African continent. It's not all rosy here. All right. And then I'm also going to look at some wrong notions about returning to Africa. And finally, I'll talk you through a 5-step process to recreate a Dan Foster experience, or better still, to return to Africa the right way and become, that beloved African that we're going to be proud of, and that would make some real significant change on the continent. All right, so let's get started. Are there benefits to returning to the African continent? Absolutely, there are a number of benefits. And first, you will totally forget you were black. And I say this from a very personal experience, because in the year 2018, after I returned from a short, very brief study visit to Canada, I would remember that experience of getting back to Lagos, and nobody stopped to look at me, and I was bumping shoulders with everyone. And in fact, that is one way you are acceptable, because I remember going to this fair with two of my friends, one an Ethiopian and the other person from Malawi, and would have people clear out of the way for us. That wasn't usual, because people were moving among themselves, bumping shoulders, but we didn't get a chance to do that. So it was a real good feeling, because I've never really had people make a way for me, right? You should go to a typical African market, so you get what I mean. It's everybody shoulder to shoulder talking, going about their normal business. That's an experience I did not have in Canada. So I saw others, people were doing their thingy, but once you came into the mix, they made a way for you. I had that experience in shopping malls, and you'd walk into an aisle to shop and people leave the aisle because I don't know why, but I figured some of them probably did not want to stay very close to someone who was not white. I didn't get a chance to interview anyone. I wasn't interested, and as a matter of fact, I did enjoy the experience. Yeah, honestly I did. But then when I returned home, I felt that relief, I felt that joy, that happiness, because I was finally among my young people and no one cared what I was doing. No one was caring. And there were even uglier experiences that some of my friends and colleagues had while we were in Canada that I didn't get a chance to feel. Like being followed. So we had some of them who were followed in shopping malls, and it wasn't just the Africans who had this experience. The Asians also had this experience. I have a friend who's Indian, and he was followed in a shopping mall. As soon as he got in there, someone followed him everywhere he went and watched what he was doing just to be sure he wasn't stealing anything. I don't know, but that's what we assumed. So when you're in Africa, no one stops to stare. No one cares. Like, you're just one of us, and you feel that sense of belonging, that sense of acceptance. And the second benefit you're going to enjoy when you're in Africa is the fact that there are many great investment opportunities. It's easy for people to talk about the American dream and, maybe about a boy or girl who goes to the United States with nothing, maybe with $10 in their pocket, and 30 years later they've built a very successful business. Well, you should come to Africa, and we have very awesome stories, even more awesome than that. Nigeria is the greatest black nation in the world and also has some of the greatest investment opportunities you'd ever come by, and the heart of all of that would be the city of Lagos. You should go to Lagos, and everyone in Lagos has a story, because people are leaving the rural areas, leaving neighboring countries and coming into Lagos, and in a few years some of them make something of themselves and become really, really successful. But as it is in the big cities, so it is even in the hinterlands. Great business opportunities exist, and if I get a request, I'll probably talk about what investment opportunities exist in some African countries. And here's a little example. In Nigeria, almost half of all agricultural produce are lost because no one is processing them, no one is storing them. So the produce comes straight out of the farm, and then they go to the market. Some are lost on the way, some go bad in the market and all that, and a lot of them are lost in the farm because there isn't adequate food processing packaging systems that exist. And that's about the biggest opportunity we have coming out of places like Nigeria. Ghana has a pretty stable economy and is a personal favorite, and lots of people love to go there. South Africa, also is a real good place to go to, despite the whole xenophobic attacks we've had happen it's always been there. And that's something else we're going to look at some other time, because like I said, it's not all rosy. And a third benefit that we shall consider, and this is the last we're going to consider in this video because I don't want this to be too lengthy, would be you get a chance at a new life. So you want to start all over again. You want to maybe do things differently. You want to see how things pan out for you, or it doesn't matter if you're young or old or whatever. There's always that opportunity to begin again, and Africa presents that real great opportunity because things are really simple and straight forward, and you can move in, start, and hopefully everything works out. But like I said, it's not all rosy, and so I'm going to look at a few of the disadvantages to returning to Africa. And the first would be the social services are not as good as you have them. Well, depending on where you're coming from, because I've heard it said that the educational system in the United States of America is bad. It's not as good as you have it in Canada and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, in Nigeria, We have some really, really good schools, like some really fantastic schools, and some even operating at international standards. But those are in a minority, and most of the schools are not as good as what you have. In fact, at the point I'm recording this video, the president of Nigeria is away in the United Kingdom assessing healthcare, because there probably isn't a clinic good enough to treat him of whatever he's having. So you see, so that kind of tells you where we are health-wise. Of course, I mean, there are some reasons why we stay healthy, which we can trace to probably our gene and to alternative medicine or indigenous health systems that have sustained our ancestors for thousands of years. But when it comes to Western medicine, as you know it, it's not exactly as good. A lot of the hospitals are bad, and a lot of our best healthcare professionals are out in Europe and America working because the pay is better, of course. And the next disadvantage we're going to look at will be infrastructure. It's not as good. Electricity is not as abundant as you have it. And depending on what country you go to, you are not very likely to have power all the time of the day. So that's something you want to look at very critically, especially if those kinds of things matter to you. I know there are lots of people who don't care about electricity, and 3 hours of electricity a day and they're fine. But if you're gonna need electricity 24 hours a day, then you might want to be very careful which African country you return to, because most African countries do not have electricity all day round. I don't talk about the roads because you probably figured it out. The roads are bad. Water supply, well, good luck getting pipe-on water. Maybe there's a well, maybe there's a borehole, I don't know. It's different everywhere, and there are places where you go to and you have to provide your own water. And that's a bit of advice I'll be giving towards the end, because if you want to move to Africa, then you must understand the context. And you can't just pack up your bags and expect that your home in Africa is going to be a duplicate and it's going to have all the stuff you had wherever you were coming from. So the infrastructure is not exactly the same, and a lot of times it's not going to be the kind of stuff you're used to. And finally, let's talk about culture shock. Yeah, when we talk about culture shock, we talk about a European going to China and realizing that the way of life of the Chinese, it's different. Or you're going to India and, all those kinds of stuff. That's cool. But then when you come to Africa, you realize that we have a crazy diversity, right? The diversity in Africa is at God level. Is out of the world. That's kind of what I mean. With over 1,000 languages and cultures and distinct tribal groups, you are going to meet all sorts of people, and there's going to be all sorts of things. So it's not enough to find a place that seemingly agrees with you and then you move in and then that's fine. No, you have to do your studies. You have to understand who those people are, what they hold valuable, and only then will you be able to live among them and succeed. So when you're returning to Africa, your success depends on the mindset with which you come. And with that, I'll talk about some of the wrong notions of returning to Africa. Well, there is one notion we know so well, and that is what we call the savior mindset. When we were colonized, the colonizers told us that they were here to save us. And when our politicians come, they tell us they are here to save us. So we've had hundreds and thousands of saviors in the past 120 years that our territories have been occupied, and we have had to live these kinds of lives that have kept us down. So if you want to return to Africa and you think you want to be a savior, then think again. I think we're sick of saviors. And number two, there isn't exactly so much to save, because a lot of the stuff you see on YouTube do not always represent the truth of what Africa is. And that is why I love to tell my story from different perspectives. I would like to show you what is good, and I'd like to show you what isn't working, and it helps me stay true to myself. And I want to ensure that if you're a member of this community, that I do not mislead you and I do not at any point, suggest things that are quite untrue. So we don't need any saviors. It's only our people who can change our narratives. And I understand that when you live in the diaspora and you were not born on this continent, you want to feel like you belong and therefore you should be able to make changes. That's cool, but understand this. African people hold very dearly their cultures, their traditions. And if you don't understand these, all of the efforts you put into helping the communities grow would come to a waste. I'll share 2 stories with you, and these are true life stories. So in the year 2010, I was living in northern Nigeria. At the time, I was completing a program we call the National Youth Service. So it's kind of paramilitary training you undergo, and you have to go to some other part of the country where you live for 12 months. Within this period, you serve the federal government, and that's like a service to your nation. After that, you can go back to your normal life. During this period, I worked at a higher institution, the College of Health Technology, Ningi in Bauchi State, where I taught anatomy and physiology. But while that was happening, there was also a non-profit program that was helping the school upgrade their educational outcomes, and that was a Canadian National Development Agency. So I got attached to some staff of that agency, and I contributed to some of the work that they did in the school. And during one of the workshops that they had in the school, someone told a story about a project that was delivered somewhere in Bauchi State a few years earlier. And these foreigners visited this local community hoping to help improve the quality of their lives. And they realized that the people living in this community would travel 5 miles to defecate, and then they would return to their villages. And every morning, all the children would make that 5-mile trip to defecate, and they would return a few hours later. And these foreigners felt, if we're going to build schools that succeed in this environment, then the children must stay in the community so they can go to school. And so they built toilets in the community, and they called the people together, give them a training, and they said, these are toilets, this is where you defecate, so you don't have to go 5 miles to do that anymore. But these foreigners forgot to conduct a proper needs assessment, so they did not understand why the 5-mile trip was important. And the reason that happened was the people who lived in this community resided in little round huts, and you had all members of the family sleep in those huts every night. That meant the parents did not have time to have sex, right? So, it's always about the sex, right? So every morning when the children went on that long trip to defecate, that was the only time the parents had to have sex. And when the toilets were built and they were taught about it, they totally understood what toilets were and what toilets were for. But the parents understood that if the kids started using the toilets, then they wouldn't have time to have sex anymore. And so they encouraged their children to stick to the tradition. So a lot of times, traditions that we have in different African cultures have different motivations. And if these foreigners who spent all their time and resources building toilets understood this, then maybe they would have come to a conclusion that what the people really needed were not toilets in the communities, but to change the way their houses were built. And so if you build separate houses or separate rooms for the parents and the children, then the parents can have sex whenever they want without interruptions by the children, you see. And that was one very unproductive project because the foreigners did not understand what the people really needed. Now, a similar story from another community in Bauchi had these aid workers make boreholes in the villages, hoping that they could save women the long trips that they made to the stream. But if you had any understanding of the cultures in northern Nigeria, you know that men are confined to their homes, and it's mostly men who run the errands and do all the activities that have to be done outside of the home. And so the only time the women got to socialize was when they went to the stream. So when these aid workers made boreholes in the community providing abundant water, the women agreed that the trip to the stream was still more important than having water at their doorsteps, because that was the only time they had to see themselves, and that was the only time they had to socialize. And so they refused to use the borehole, and they actually never did, because what they wanted was more social life. They did not want water, or at least they prioritized their social lives to having water very close to them. And so a more appropriate intervention would have been to get the men to change the culture a bit and let the women have more time to socialize. I know that some of these stories may not represent life as you already know it, but then it's also to help you understand the diversity of the African continent. And so when you return to Africa and you choose a community where you think you want to make an impact, or where you want to go settle down, so think about this and know that the people have had enough of persons swooping in and feeling that they can help the African people, and a lot of times it doesn't quite work out well. And so I would encourage you to return, but don't come with the savior mindset, be like Dan Foster. Just come to work and live your life, and then if your life inspires the people, then that's awesome. Next, is also important to understand that things are not going to be the way they used to be. The whatever life you were used to, wherever you've been, it's going to be very, very different, and it's up to you to try to understand the new context in which you're going to live and try to adapt. And this again is a true life story, something that happened in the city where I am recording this video right now, Enugu. So many years ago, it so happened that Nigerians living in diaspora, a lot of these Nigerians were not born in Nigeria but had Nigerian parents. They had formed this development organization, and they wanted to get more in touch with their roots. They wanted to come home from time to time and see how they can support their people at home. And that seemed like a really cool thing. So they created this association in the US, and they would eventually come home every 3 years to hold a conference. So the first time they chose to have this conference very close to home, it was happening in Enugu, and they had invited some dignitaries, including native Igbo people, right? And just in case you're not Igbo, there is usually a very important ceremony Igbos perform at every event that they have. And, it's the prayers. The prayers will say with the kola nuts. Because to the Igbo man, kola is like, the Holy Communion. It is the one thing with which we interact with God and keep peace with one another. But the kola has very strict traditions and customs on how first it is handled, second on how the prayers are said, who can say the prayer. Anybody can't say the prayers with the kola nut. In every event, it doesn't quite work that way. But because these people grew in a very different society, they came in and they said, okay, yeah, it's time for kola. So they got the kola nuts, and then they distributed to everyone, male, female, young, old, and all that. And some native Igbo people in that gathering got up and left. Well, our friends, of course, did not notice, and they just went on to do their thing. So what they had done in that space and time would be considered a taboo, in the culture. And so a lot of our people would not participate in whatever it is they were doing because they were disrespecting the culture of the land. So I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but our people take these things pretty serious. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video talking about what the kola nut means to Igbo people, or why it would be insulting to handle it in certain ways, but just so that we're clear on what I was trying to say, the kola nut is considered sacred by the Igbos, and before an event begins, there is usually the kola breaking and the prayers. Now, those prayers are said by an elder, but any elder can't say the prayer. It has to be an elder who is of the land. So if there were old people from other parts of Igbo land, say Abia State, Ebonyi State, Anambra, and somebody from Enugu, and we're in Anambra, The elder from Anambra State says the prayer. You can't come from elsewhere and then you go break kola elsewhere. It doesn't quite work, except if there are no elders from that part, or an elder from that part delegates the job to you, and then you can do it on his behalf. That's kind of like how it works. And on a very general note, women do not break the kola in the General Assembly. That's kind of how it works, except if it's a General Assembly of women, or if it's a woman who has taken certain titles, because in Igbo culture, titles matter, right? So it doesn't matter how old you are, but if I'm a titled man and we're breaking kola together, the job of breaking the kola falls to me. And in cultures where women take titles and become chiefs and kings and all that, the woman would break the kola. But usually in public events, a man breaks the kola. And there are ways you don't handle the kola. Not everybody can pick kola from the plate. So there are people who can pick the kola, and there are people who are giving the kola. So that's kind of how it works, but we shall talk about that some other time if the need for that arises. So what works, what is acceptable, who can use what names, what titles, where you can build your house, what kind of house you can build, all that depends on where you choose to settle. Because I also learned that in some parts of Bauchi State, people could not build high-rising buildings. There were communities that only allowed bungalows, and for their own cultural reasons, you weren't allowed to build high-rising buildings, even if you could afford it. So if you're going to live in communities like that, you're going to build houses that are just like everyone else's, and you can't deviate from that. So if you're going to succeed at returning to Africa and with staying here with us, then it would be in your best interest to have a change of mindset and be ready to accept what works here, and that way everybody would be fine. So you want to come back to Africa. What are the basic steps you should take if you really want to succeed at returning and staying on the African continent? Now, I understand that you may have African ancestry, or maybe you just love the way Africans live, and this process that I'm going to describe here have been successfully applied even by people who do not have African ancestry, and they have come to live among our people, took titles, married, lived and died with us, and a lot of them are buried here and were given proper burials as the true Africans that they truly were. So if you want to return to the continent, there are 5 basic steps I think you should take in order to succeed, and one would be introspect. Conduct some research, but first that research must begin from you, and then you have to consider very important questions like, who am I? What do I stand for? What can I accept and what can't I accept? What do I really want out of this return to Africa? Are you coming in to continue the kind of life you already live? Like Dan Foster, when he came to Nigeria, nothing really changed. Dan was a radio personality, and he remained a radio personality in Nigeria till he died, and he got really good jobs, and he worked and he helped, shape the industry, and, he inspired people, lived and died. So, you come in to continue what you're already doing? Are you coming to do something else? What's your purpose for returning? And that is really, really important if you're going to have a real good time here. When you found answers and the key to who you are, then you might want to look at all that Africa has to offer, with over 1 billion people and 1,000 tribes, languages. So you have your work cut out for you. Where do you want to go to in Africa? What do you really want to get out of Africa? You want to come home, have a real quiet life, raise a family and all that. You want to come home, work, help communities develop. Do you want to travel from culture to culture and experience them? What really are you coming to do? And what would be the best fit for you? And what country, what tradition, what religion would be the best fit for you. So if you are an Orthodox Catholic and you wanted to come to Africa and you want to continue the practice of that religion, there are parts of Africa you'd go to and you won't have any access to Orthodox Catholic religion. So you have to narrow your search down. So maybe you want to be a teacher, you want to come teach in a higher institution or in a secondary school or primary school because you have the academic qualification and you think you can contribute in that way, that's totally good. Then you have to look at all the different countries, what educational systems they operate, and which one would work the best for you. So that's going to be quite a bit taxing. So it's not enough to say, all of my friends went to Tanzania, or man, everybody's going to Ghana, or Ludacris went to Gabon, and therefore I should also go to Gabon, or I should also go to Congo, or that wouldn't be the best for you. So you have to find out exactly what works for you and go on to do that, and next you explore. So when you've made a list of possible countries and communities you might want to go be a part of, I wouldn't advise you to go online and chat people up and send out emails and try to find out stuff, for very good reasons, because we have plenty African princes or Nigerian princes, and trust me, all of those princes are not African, because there is proof that a lot of white people are Nigerian princes and they scam people as though they were Africans. Of course, I'm not saying that Africans are not scammers. Well, we have quite a lot of them, and personally, I've had to deal with a lot of those. But in your best interest, you should want to actually visit some of those countries and see firsthand what those countries have to offer. And so if you've picked 2 or 3 countries, you might want to look at them very closely, find what works for you, and finally you'd be able to decide based on the information that you have acquired yourself. Now, I also understand that a lot of people of African descent who live in the diaspora may not have substantial budgets to explore all the places they might want, and so you might consider working together with other persons in the diaspora who would also want to visit those places, and so you all can split up the work and visit different locations, share information, make videos and share with others. Not like I don't trust the videos on YouTube, but I've been doing this YouTube thing for about 2 years, and I watch the content that come out of my own community, and I can tell you that the people share with you all the stuff they feel will get them all the views and would give them a really, really good life, other than trying to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly of their own societies. And we totally understand that. So if you want to return and not have regrets, it may be pricey, but do this exploration all by yourself, and so you can get first-hand information. And when you have explored, then you have to create a transition plan. Well, I don't believe that it's in your best interest to just pack your things up and leave. Now, I don't think that's good at all. So you have to consider a transition period from when you start leaving your current home country till when you settle down and become a full member of your new community. And that would imply that you work out a budget, very important, and ensure that you have enough money to keep you going for a substantial amount of time. Are there jobs you're going to do where you're going to, or are you going to establish your own business, or are you a YouTuber? Are you going to make YouTube content and make money from your content and all that? So it's totally all up to you. So if you're a multi-millionaire and you have so much money, then it doesn't really matter. You don't need a transition plan. Get on a jet, go buy a house somewhere in Africa, buy a land, buy 100 acres, build yourself a castle and live in it. And if eventually, things don't check out the way you want it, you sell the stuff and you go back. But if you can afford to do that, then it's best you have a transition plan, one that caters for your feeding, your transportation, your job search, if you haven't found one already. But I'd advise you to find a job if you are hoping to work in Africa, because we have unemployment issues in many African countries, and there are no indications you're going to have automatic employment as soon as you arrive. You have to work out all the details so you don't get stranded anywhere along the way. And once you have a great transition plan, then you have to do the final thing, which is enculturate. So the process of enculturation isn't complete until you have become a member of the community. So, take a wife, have children, eat the food, participate in the culture, take a title, if there's a thing in the part of Africa you choose to go to, become one with the people. And that is what I understand returning to Africa to be. Start a business, build an empire, contribute to the economic development of the people, not because you're giving them handouts, but because you are a productive member of community. And I think that matters even more than all the aids and assistance that people feel that they want to bring back. So do we want you to come live in Africa? Absolutely. We're the least judgmental people on earth, and we're still the most welcoming and hospitable people you'll ever meet. And so, yes, if you want to come, bring it on. Let's do good for the continent. Let's do good for the people. And I think the future of Africa, with a lot of Africans returning to the continent, is very bright, and it can only get better. So we've experienced the worst of it all, but right now we can rebuild and we can go on to create a very beautiful Africa. But in my usual fashion, I would also want to leave a warning, because a lot of African communities still have these things that divide us. We are not exactly one united people. And just before I started recording this video, I came across these clips from Twitter of this lady and her friends, and they had gone to Cape Verde, which is an island country in West Africa. So when you're African, you should have an ECOWAS passport, and this is an ECOWAS passport. It looks somewhat like this, but this is green because it's Nigerian, and with this I should be able to travel to just about any West African country, and I can stay for up to 60 days without requiring a visa. But even with this, these Nigerians were denied entry into Cape Verde, even when other persons who were traveling with them, including a Nigerian who had a foreign passport, were all allowed into the country. So, there are all of these little squabbles and issues we have from time to time, like the Nigerian embassy in Ghana getting demolished. I think that was sometime last year. And then, of course, xenophobia in South Africa, in Mozambique, and, all of these crazy things, because you still find these little arguments, from the least serious ones, like the Nigerian jollof and Ghana jollof argument has been, raging for years, to even more serious xenophobic attacks where people lose their lives across Africa. And these are Africans hating on other African people. So that's kind of a reality. And if anyone told you that Africa is a paradise where you just come into and there's a Garden of Eden and everything is perfect and beautiful, then they're probably lying, and they're not telling you the truth about the whole matter. So there are going to be those issues, there are going to be those divisions, and depending on where you go to, you might be required to take sides, and these things happen, right? And if you choose to come to Nigeria, then no, people aren't gonna like you so much, because Nigeria is a real great country, but Nigerians are the most hated Africans everywhere in the world, probably because we don't have a very good reputation because of the crimes and the lifestyles of some Nigerians. But I don't make excuses for people, but we're 200 million, so you're sure to have a few bad eggs. Now compare that to other African countries with 30, 40 million, 20 million people, or 10 million people. When you have 10 million people, how many criminals do you expect to have? When you have 200 million people, they will proportionately have more persons who are errant and who would probably give us a bad name. So it's not a surprising thing that some African countries have real bad reputations, while others have real good reputations. But when you choose wisely, find what works for you, and good luck with that. So if you'd like us to talk about moving to Africa, then the comment section would be the best place to do that. Let's hit it up in the comment section. Let's talk and talk it out. Yeah, bring your questions, bring your experiences, did you move to Africa? Did you try to move to Africa? Are you currently living in Africa, and would you want to share experiences with us? Let's bring the stories to the comment section. Let's have fun doing that. So do well to give us a like, share this video, and if you're not subscribed to the channel and you'd like to be, click on the subscribe button and do well to click on the bell so you're notified every time we'll make new content. And today I'd like to give a shout out to a member of this community, and someone who's come to become my own brother, the Incredible Cliff. Incredible Cliff is also a Nigerian YouTuber and makes real good content. You should go check out his channel. And Cliff, this is me saying thank you for being supportive of the SEVICS Africa YouTube channel, and thank you for always having my back. I love you, bro. All right, thank you all for watching. See you in the next video.